Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of SACCI's COVID-19 webinar series. Today, we, of course, are going to be chatting about the tourism and hospitality industry within the context of COVID-19 and trying to provide some industry updates and perspective. Of course, the context of today's webinar takes place following from the SACCI-led, with our fellow bilateral partners, survey on really what the needs and challenges were to this industry, and many of you have been party to the survey, so thank you very, very much. Really, the aim of today is just to contextualize the results of the survey within the context of level 2, and really how are we going to chart our course going forward as the industry as a whole, whether you be a restaurant, hotel, in the industry, related industries as well. So welcome to all those joining here today. We're going to allow a few minutes for those to come in. Welcome to Beatrice, Carmen, Christian. Welcome to, I see some of our fellow bilateral chambers are also here. So welcome to you and welcome to your members as well. It's always great to be able to partner with our fellow partners and bilateral chambers, particularly on issues that are so deep set at the moment. So welcome to those coming in. You've just joined us for our tourism and hospitality webinar in the context of COVID-19. And as I've said, we're going to be looking a little bit at the industry updates and perspectives following from the SACCI survey that was distributed a couple of weeks ago. So thank you very, very much for everyone participating and everyone joining today. As I've stated, really, we are going to contextualize the challenges and the needs following from the results of the survey, as well as looking at how can we move forward together as an industry within the current context and beyond. So joining me today and helping me answer these questions is Frank Derash from the Four Seasons, the Westcliff, who is also a SACCI director, board director. Welcome to you, Frank. And of course, we have Chifiwa Chivengwa, who is the CEO of the Tourism Business Council South Africa, TBCSA. I'm sure many of you are familiar with him, working in the industry. And of course, he has been quite active in this time. So really, we're going to have the opportunity to lean on his expertise today. So welcome to you, sir. Thank you for joining us. And welcome to you, Frank. Thanks for being here today as well. Just a quick run through of the agenda. We're going to have that brief recap from Frank, just on the survey results, really just to give us a bit of context, followed by which we're going to have the industry updates and perspectives, but more of a conversation with Chifiwa and myself today. So please do submit your questions throughout the webinar as they come to you. You can do so by writing in the chat box, which is located at the bottom of your screen. So please do send through your questions. Today really is about engaging and having a dialogue as fellow people in the industry, and really sort of taking the problems and seeing how we can work with them going forward, and the type of support that we can lend to each other as bilateral chambers and relevant partners. So before we kick off today's webinar, I'd just like to give a brief thanks, of course, to our bilateral chambers, to the American, to the British, the Belgian, the German, and the Spanish, as well as the Austrian Trade Commission. Thank you very much for your support, not only in the survey, but also in today's webinar, and really for us to come together and sort of offer that support to our members and to those in the industry is fantastic. So thank you very, very much. And also thank you to the South African Chefs Association, as well as to Gilles Branc, who is a hospitality entrepreneur, as well as a SACCI Cape Town committee member, who's been integral not only in initiating the survey, but also today's webinar itself. So thank you very much to all those there. And without further delay, I'm going to hand over to you, Frank, to get us started in today's conversation.
Thank you very much, Amy, and thank you for the introduction. I actually had prepared all the thank yous on my side, but I don't need to do it, so that's perfect. I just want to explain a little bit the behind the scenes of the survey. And as Amy said, it will take like 5-10 minutes, and then most of the webinar will be spent with Chifiwa to have a bit of an insight of what's next, right? So as you know, as you all know, especially if you're in this industry, the tourism and hospitality industry, it has been very, very hardly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. As you also know, in French culture, food and wine or beverages is very important. And so it's not a surprise that the survey was kind of initiated by one of our key members in Cape Town, Gilles Blanc. And then we thought, okay, how do we organize this survey? Do we limit it to French members? And very quickly we realized, obviously, that would be a very small sample and wouldn't have enough relevance. And this is when we started to contact other chambers who we were extremely happy to see that they were very happy to join and contribute and forward to their members. And then suddenly the sample and the survey had a lot more meaning. So we thanked already the different chambers and partners. I'd also like to thank in advance and for all the work the people at the FSACCI, Melanie and Guillaume, who've helped. And so I'll just, as I said, give some key data and from that survey. You have to remember that the survey was done in July. So obviously a lot of the data was relevant to July, but I think it's still some interesting talking points that we can share, and some, let's say, about the alcohol ban and moving from level 3 to level 2 have impacted most of all positively, that have brought some changes to the results of that survey. So let me start with those highlights, and I just want to highlight 4 key figures here in percentage that I think are extremely meaningful. The first one is that 13% of the respondents, so we had a sample of more than 200 responses, but then out of those 200, a few people were from the same company. So then we cleaned the database a little bit and narrowed it down to 175 responses. So that is our sample. So if you look at 13% of those respondents at the end of July had already terminated activities or filed for bankruptcy. Then the other key figure is the 78% of the respondents are financially dependent on additional UIF TERS. And I think, although we're now in level 2, that might still be the case. 58% of the respondents had already resorted of permanent layoffs, and 74% of the respondents had injected some additional cash. So I think that's the big take from this survey, is the issue of cash flow for our industry, for the tourism and hospitality industry. As we're going to see now, it's a lot of small or micro enterprises, and cash flow is a big issue. And when a crisis like this hits, well, we can really see it, and unfortunately it has an extremely negative impact. So if you look at the typology, as I said, we had 175 responses in our sample. It was quite balanced in terms of the line of work, especially between the restaurant, bars and clubs and the travel and management and touristic activities. But we also had a very good number, we feel, of hotel and accommodation responses, as well as events and catering, and then a smaller part with the wine and spirits. But a very good sample to work with. Company size, as you can see there in orange and in dark blue, most of them were micro or small enterprises. Again, coming back to the cash flow issue. And then in terms of the business location, a nice spread between Gauteng and the Western Cape, with each over a third of the respondents. We kind of expected that, obviously, being the two economic powerhouses in South Africa. If you look at the next one in terms of the impact, I think one of the key questions to start the survey was to understand how the business or their businesses were doing last year. And if you take the light blue and the yellow, it shows that 74% of the companies had a good 2019 and had a strong or moderate increase. So I would say at the end of last year, quite a positive outlook. But now if you look at the current situation, and then over the past few months, you can see that in orange, 50% at the end of July, 50% of the businesses in our sample had temporarily ceased their activity, and then another 48% had decreased in terms of revenue. So again, huge impact. If you look at the next page, still on the impact, but now with regards to staff, 76% of the responding companies had reported to temporary layoff their staff between the start of the lockdown on the 27th of March and the end of July. So almost, well, a little bit more than 3/4 of the companies surveyed. And then if you look at the permanent layoffs, that was 58% of the companies who responded to the survey had permanently laid off some of their staff. So again, obviously, if you don't have people staying in your hotel or eating at your restaurant or organizing events or booking trips, then you need to reduce the wages and salaries and the staff. And so that's a big chunk. If you look at the next page, with regards to employers' contribution and cash injection, 61% of the responding companies the employers had supplemented the UIF grant for some of their employees, so showing some generosity, which I'm sure was appreciated by all these employees. And then 74% of them, so 3/4 of them, had injected additional cash in order for the company to survive. So again, discussing with banks, with investors, a lot of them have discussed with friends or family to try to get cash into the company, making the situation very critical. And then there was a big part of the survey was also about rent negotiations. We had a lot of different answers, but 81%, so a very strong majority of the respondents had negotiated their business rents during lockdown. So it went from not paying anything, postponing the payments, a percentage of the revenue if there was any revenue, etc., etc. So again, dire circumstances and situation. If you look at the barometer, I think if you look at that particular page, what comes out of it is huge pessimism. So 54% of the responding companies believe that it will take more than a year from now to resume normal activity. We're still in lockdown. We don't know when the next stage lockdown level 1 will be implemented, and then all the limitations with weddings and gatherings and events. For now, we don't know yet, right? And then in terms of the next graph there, 90% of the responding companies view the company's economic outlook for the next 12 months negatively. So pessimism, which is worrisome. And the question about the next 2 to 5 years, again, 3/4 of the respondents said that it was unfavorable or not promising. So if you're an investor, if you want to start a business here in South Africa or buy a business in this particular industry, the next few years, if we look at the responses from the sample, are going to be tough. And then in terms of perspective and strategy, before we go into the different segments, majority agreed that we are in a new world. 84% said that it would be different from the pre-COVID, and 87% agreed that we have to rethink. So a way to rethink and to better prioritize was shown in that last graph. Focus on improving profitability, find new markets, and diversify the offer. And that's basically a do or die situation in order to survive. Then very quickly on the different segments. So the focus one was restaurants, bars, and clubs. At the end of July, 41% of those businesses had decided not to reopen. And of those who had reopened, there was basically no profitability, right? So either they were running it at a loss, or it was just cost efficient to keep the business afloat. And then with regards to alcohol sales, obviously that has changed a lot since we've gone to level 2. But you can see on that graph the importance for restaurants, for clubs, and for bars, obviously, but of alcohol sales. If you cannot sell alcohol, then there's no point in having your business opened. The deciding factors for reopening for the restaurant, bars and clubs, so some have now been tackled. the alcohol sales. That was a huge relief. But if you look at the national curfew, it's still a problem for a lot of those businesses, because if people have to be home by 10, you have an hour of cleaning, you have an hour of transport for a lot of stuff. So basically you need to close your restaurant, if we talk about a restaurant, around 8 or 8:30, when most of the business happens from 8 or 8:30. And then the international travel restrictions. We'll see, especially in terms of accommodation and travel businesses, how important the international travel and the reopening of the borders is. In terms of the pricing, I think that's extremely significant. Most businesses, 67%, so 2/3, have decided not to increase their prices with the new regulations and protocols, health, safety, hygiene. There are a lot of extra costs, but most businesses have decided to incur those costs, which means less profitability. So in the long run, is it sustainable? The focus too was hotel and accommodation. As I mentioned, the international client base, 71% agree that they have been severely impacted by the international travel ban. And that's an element maybe we can discuss with Chief Iwe afterwards, because there's a lot of uncertainty around it, but there's such a desperate need for those borders to reopen. And also the key figure saying that 82% of the business for hotels and accommodation is around leisure. So we knew that until the end of level 3, it was mostly business travel. Now, fortunately, we have leisure again. The reopening capacity, that's also a very interesting stat. Most hotels will not reopen at full capacity. So that's a key element of this survey, I believe, for the hotel industry. So decreasing the number of rooms because of the COVID-19 restrictions, and therefore less revenue. And then also in terms of the pricing, not include any increase, meaning a decrease in profitability. So really not easy. And then there was a question with regards to commission structures. A lot of hotels and accommodations work with online tour operators. They have very strict agreements, etc. But most of the respondents said that they would try to renegotiate those agreements. We know it's not the most flexible with the OTAs, but hopefully there will be some help coming from there. If we look at the third focus, it was with regards to the events and catering and tour operators. It showed that the percentage of the client base, 70%, heavily rely on private clients. So again, since level 2, I think there's a bit of movement happening. But then there's also, especially with regards to travel agents and tour operators, a little bit less so with events and catering, a heavy rely on international travel, which, as we discussed already, this is still closed, and we don't know for how long. If we look at the strategy, I think most of them said they would differentiate themselves with innovation, niche products and services. That's the same across the boards. And I think a lot of people are trying to reinvent themselves and find new revenue streams. We've seen with the webinars that we're doing right now have become extremely popular, but how to make it different and more interesting and more interactive. That's what that particular segment is working on. At the time of the survey, at the end of July, 82% of the companies involved had fully suspended the events with no alternative implemented. So for the event industry, and I'm thinking also about all the sub-industries linked to that, so audiovisual, etc. It's going to be a very long way to recover from that. And then the last element was on the last focus was on the wine and spirits. And just to summarize, but it was clear to see that whether you were importing liquor or alcohol from overseas or exporting, because of the alcohol ban, except that small break in June, but that alcohol ban heavily impacted revenue and resources, staff, salaries, the companies that are involved in this business. And I think now a lot of people are happy that at least it's been lifted and that they can sell again, whether it's on premises or buying from liquor stores, for example. But there are still a few restrictions, and so I don't think any of these companies is back to normal, and it will also take a while to come back to like a pre-COVID status. We also had the last part was about comments and just if some of the respondents wanted to add how they were feeling. Again, a lot of people insisted on the TERS and how it could be prolonged. Someone said that it was the greatest crisis faced by this industry. I think even when we had 9/11 or when there was the big crisis at the end of the 2000s, it was not as bad as what we're facing now. And I think a lot of jobs are still on the line despite the now us being in level 2. So that was just a summary of the survey. Again, thank you so much for taking part. Thank you to our partners. And now I'd like to hand back the mic to Amy and to Chifiwa to look a little bit at what are the next steps and what's happening from now and for immediate or long-term future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frank, just for that quick recap of the survey. No doubt some valuable information that has come out of that, and really I think paints the pictures, a very slim picture of all the realities that many of our companies here today and in the industry in general are feeling. And although there's perhaps some reprieve in level 2, I think really the deep-seated consequences are going to be quite long-lasting. And I suppose there are still further challenges to overcome. And it's at this point that I'm going to hand over to you, Chifiwa, to maybe just give us an update on where we're at as the industry at the moment. Maybe if you can clarify some of the points that I think need some clarity and have been quite common in the questions I can see coming through at the moment. And maybe just a word from your role as TBCSA and what you guys have been up to and what kind of support you can offer to companies at the moment and trying to navigate this whole situation. So I'll hand over to you, but just a quick word. If anyone would like to pose their questions, you can find the chat box at the bottom of your screen. So please don't be shy. We're here to engage with not only the panelists, but your fellow members of the same industry here today. So please don't be shy, send through your questions and we'll get to them after Chifiwa has given us a quick word. Over to you, Chifiwa.
Thank you very much, Amy, and good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure being here to talk about the industry that I love, that I've been working within for the past 20 years. I think just by way of introduction, there may be some people who know me, there may be those that don't know me. I am the CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, which is the representative body for the tourism businesses across the value chain here in South Africa. Our job is quite simple. We make sure that businesses have a good trading environment by way of engaging with policymakers, from parliament to the presidency, to ensure that tourism thrive and more people are employed within this sector. So that's the primary job, to represent the interests of the private sector and to ensure that tourism thrives. Now, having said all that, our job is to work for the businesses across the value chain here in South Africa, from the chefs to the hotels, to the car rentals, to bed and breakfast, to hotels, resorts, attractions, conference centers, and many, many more within the value chain, is to ensure that all these businesses are able to thrive and they're able to really contribute to the economy. As it has been said before, tourism is quite important in South Africa, contributes about 8.6% of GDP. That's both direct and indirect. If you look at international travel, you're looking at around 120 billion rand worth of income or foreign currency that comes into South Africa based on the numbers 2018. I'm sure the 2019 numbers are going to be similar or slightly more by a percentage or two. There's about 1.5 million people who work within the tourism sector in South Africa, or jobs that are being supported, both direct and indirect. It makes it one of the largest employers here in South Africa. If you compare it to mining, you will see that mining employs around 450,000 people, whereas tourism employs a whole lot more. And if you look at the total spend that we receive in South Africa from tourism, it's around 273 billion rand, of which, as I've said, 120 billion comes from international market, and the rest is from domestic tourism. But one of the most important things is that, if you look at the restaurant sector, you're looking at around 33.8 billion rand that we could sort of track, that is spent within, the restaurants, food and bev, and many other things that are involved in that. So it's a large industry. It's an important industry for this economy. And for far too long, travel and tourism and hospitality has not been taken very seriously, within the government sphere. There's always been the back and forth in terms of, how tourism should be treated, and the misunderstanding of what tourism is, of what, restaurants or liquor sales contribute, to this industry has been misunderstood. And we found ourselves in the beginning of COVID and the subsequent lockdown. On the initial part of the lockdown, we thought, okay, maybe this lockdown will last the initial part, and then we'll move on and more things will be opened. But the introduction of the risk-adjusted strategy really put the spanner in the wheels. What we had to do as the Tourism Business Council was to then say, well, how do we unlock this industry? How do we make sure that we display the value of this industry to government? And we have done so, and painfully so, in justifying all the time many different parts of tourism, including many things that were not known. As an example, the fact that 12.5% of locally manufactured cars are bought by car rental companies. It's not something that government had recognized as important. They talk about manufacturing, but they don't talk about the feeders of this manufacturing, of which we had to do that. The same as 8% direct impact on retail sector, and the same as 206 billion rand in capital and supply chain expenditure. And many, many other things, we impact manufacturing, services, fuel, construction, and many other industries. Now, having said that, we've worked hard to get the industry open, and it's through, the commitment from the subsectors within the entire value chain. We have now, managed to get full domestic travel, although we still have a curfew. We do have restaurants now being able to sell, alcohol until, the curfew time, and also including the weekends, which didn't exist in the first place. So we are going somewhere with this. We have been able to do this, although it's done late, in my opinion. We could have had all these things under level 3, because I don't believe that the threat of COVID, was large enough for us as a tourism industry not to mitigate the spread. We've always shown that, we're very much sanitized industry. We've always shown that we're willing to comply, we can self-regulate, and we've been doing it since the beginning. But, be it that it may, things were done at a very slow pace, and, we believe that we could have opened, quite early, and we could have saved many companies and many jobs. So we are where we are now. We are here where, we have all these things that are open. But one big part of tourism and hospitality, is still not open, the international inbound market. And this both touches the leisure travelers and also corporate travelers, and those that are coming into this country to invest or to do any other work that's related to being an NGO, be it embassy work or any other bilateral work that needs to be done. So we are now, have already submitted the motivation to open the international inbound. So the big question is when? I've been very clear with government that I want it to be open now in September. That's our wish, and we're not moving from opening now in September. There are reasons behind that. Many of our international source markets for tourism, come to South Africa between September and April each year. It makes this a big sort of a high season for us. And if we don't open now, a lot of people are going to start to decide to go somewhere else. And when they decide to go somewhere else, and even those that have postponed their trips that still want to come, they're going to decide to rather go where, you know, tourism is open. So we can't afford to have that. And if we don't open, you know, a large part of our sector is also going to be impacted. We believe that there's around 326,000 jobs within who are dependent on the international inbound, you know, travel and tourism. So we need to be able to save those jobs. And also, you know, any 120 billion rand worth of foreign income, I think is just third, you know, is the third largest, you know, export sector here in the country. So we need to open up. We have put our foot down. September is our month. And we'd love to see, you know, tourism opening. And I'm confident that we'll see something happening because the negotiation and the discussions have already started. And we have met with the scientist who also advises the ministers in terms of, you know, the trajectory of the pandemic and in terms of whether, you know, we will have any further risk if we open our markets. And from the discussion that we've had, it appears that there's no further risk if we open our markets. And also there's this notion, you know, that says that, you know, people believe that, you know, if we open, you know, there's going to be a flood of people trying to get here in South Africa. We believe that tourists are very responsible. We believe that, you know, the international investors that are coming here or people traveling for corporate travel, you know, they're very responsible and know how to deal with, you know, this situation by now. So it is something that we've put on the table. It is something that needs to be open. September is the month. The damage has already been done to the industry. You know, if you talk about the TIAS program, we had around 600,000 direct tourism employees that were on TIAS program. We've got many companies that are looking at retrenching between 50 to 80% of their staff. We've got many restaurants that have decided not to open. We have many people that are struggling, you know, with working capital just to reopen. Many of the large businesses within the hospitality industry, you know, are in debt for billions and billions of rand. So we cannot afford as a country to be closed or to keep the status quo of saying we cannot remove curfew, of saying we can't have international travel in. I think that we've had enough time to practice in terms of, you know, the health and safety protocols. We all now understand that we need to wear our masks. We understand we need to sanitize. And we understand that, you know, COVID, it's a very serious disease. And I believe that, you know, the fact that the recovery rate, from what I hear this morning, is over 85% is a positive. So it's time for us to open, and we've put our foot down, and we want to see the country opening up to the international markets as soon as this coming month, starting from tomorrow. We will have this discussion, and hopefully we'll conclude this discussion in the next week or so, and then we can start to move forward and be able to deal with other challenges that we're going to have. One, we're going to have a challenge of stimulating demand because people, you know, are scared of traveling. We're going to have to do so much more so that people can have confidence on our destination. So trust is the new currency. We do understand that, you know, we've got our work cut out. We do understand that it's going to require a lot of budget, and we do understand that it has to be done. And we are very much willing to partner with, you know, everyone, you know, for us, you know, to see this being realized. We do, you know, recognize that, you know, the pressure that the Chamber of Commerce can put, you know, onto government in terms of, you know, the bilaterals, the investments that have been made into this country, you know, by your governments or your companies are quite, you know, important. And if people cannot be able to travel around to look at their investment and to see where their investment is going, it's quite problematic. So we're advocating for opening up, and we believe that we will get a positive response, you know, when we conclude our discussions with government. So I'm going to leave this here, and I will tackle some of the questions as we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chifiwe, for that informative recap, and I see we have a lot of questions coming through, and of course some of them I'm sure, as everyone will understand, are quite difficult to answer, such as when are things opening, etc., etc. So I think together with you, Chifiwe, myself and Frank, we'll do the best to provide as much clarity as possible. So please feel free to join me on screen, and we can start going through some of these questions and interacting on these topics. But really the idea is, I think, before we start the questions, just to as bilateral chambers, and I speak on behalf of the French chamber and the other bilateral chambers here, to really pledge our support to you, as well as to supporting TBCSA in this together, and really today, I suppose, stimulating conversation, and really, so please do bring out your questions so that we can move forward with this and provide the support that we need to provide going forward. So Frank and Chifiwe, if you want to join us on screen, so I'm not asking questions to myself, that would be great. And I think we're going to kickstart with probably one of the most popular ones regarding the opening of the borders. And I know particularly for a lot of the participants here today are in fact foreign investors from the various chambers as well. So this of course is a big topic for them. So of course US TBCSA has advocated to the opening of the borders around that September mark. Sifu, I don't know if you can provide any further clarity towards what are the kind of stipulations or things we need to work around, or that government is considering, that really is dependent on whether we open or not around that September mark. What can we expect in that regard?
Well, we believe that we shouldn't have any stipulations. I think by now we all understand the trajectory of this virus. Even if we say, everyone should come here with a certificate that says that they've been they got a test, it really doesn't matter. And that's why we had this, meeting with the scientists and the doctors to really understand their views on these things. And when we went to them, we had been thinking that, should we then be saying to government, test 2 days before you travel? And they said, well, it's not necessary to do so, because you can get it while you're traveling, you can get it a day before you travel. So it is not something that, I believe that, we should have any stipulation. The only thing that, we may need to do is to say anyone who's traveling into the country should have a travel insurance, so that, should they fall sick, let's ensure that it's not a burden to the state. You sort of mitigate the whole argument around, how much the state is going to be spending on that matter. So I believe that there shouldn't be any stipulation. I think what we've put out is say that, we need to open up. And we need to open up in a way that everyone who wants to come should be able to come. So if we start to put stipulation of quarantine and say you arrive here, you've got to be quarantined for 10 days or so on and so forth, it's never going to work for our destination. People don't have that amount of leave, to come here and then spend time, in a hotel and then get on the road. The COVID-19 is here. One can get it while they're on the road. So I think that we need to get on with it. We need to deal with the worst case scenario, cases that may need medical attention or hospitalization as they come. We need to learn to live with this, to make sure that we balance the two, the lives and the livelihoods, as it has been said before many, many times. So I don't think any stipulation is necessary. As a destination, we can't afford to have stipulations. We already lost enough jobs. 300,000 jobs are probably going to be lost within the tourism sector. And we need to start to regain those jobs. We don't want to contribute to the higher unemployment rate that already exists in the country. So no stipulation, open up the borders. The only thing that we may want to do is to say, come with travel insurance to make sure that should you need, medical attention, the travel insurance is going to cover that. And what we've done from the tourism side is to say, should you feel that you don't want to travel, let's say it's the day before you test positive from whichever country that you're in, we've looked at issues around cancellations to say, do we really want to impose 100% cancellation? No, we don't think that's necessary, and neither do we think it's going to be competitive. So it's something that we have looked at, and there will be flexible policies that allows, those that are, willing to travel, should they test positive before they get into the aeroplane, they should be able to go back home, recover, and be able to travel again without additional, expense. So to that end, we're working with, the airlines. From the aviation point of view, we have the Board of Airline Representative, which is all the airlines, international airlines that flies into South Africa. We also have the local airlines that are working on that, and the hotels and everyone else along the value chain is working on that. So no need for stipulation. We can't afford that. We need to open up, let people come in. Let's just make sure that the stipulation that we have is the following of the protocols that we've put in place that are being used at all these places that we have, the entire value chain that I've spoken about, from car rentals to hotels and to everywhere else. That is the stipulation that we've put out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And then I see, just to provide some clarity, I see we have a question from a Michael who asked, are you lobbying a phased approach for reopening? Is it safe to assume from what you've just said now that you're not advocating for that phased approach, but rather just the opening of the industry and of the borders?
Well, we're advocating for the opening of the borders. We believe that if government has any reservations about opening the borders, they must come with a plan, and there has to be reasons for that particular plan. As South Africa doesn't have mass tourism. It's not a mass tourism destination. Yes, we do have a lot of people that come from land borders, i.e. people come from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Swaziland, and Lesotho in particular, that come here for economic reasons. I think that's a different story altogether. And that will continue to happen as it has continued to be like that for many, many years. So what we need to look at is to say, well, how many tourists come into this country? We have around 2.5, 2.6 million pure tourists that come into this country. Let me put it this way, 2.5 million, 2.6 million overseas tourists. And majority of those, if you look at places like UK, majority of those that come from UK, for example, these are repeat visitors. Some of them are coming to visit friends and relatives. So they may not even stay within, tourism establishments, but they will spend money in restaurants and many other, places. So what I'm simply saying is that we're not a mass tourism destination. We're not going to all of a sudden see a large number of people, crossing the borders and coming in. So if we say we're dealing with phased, reopening, it may be something that, is sort of a fictitious, where, we sort of believe that, getting one, people coming from, let's say it's Germany or coming from France, that's it. Yeah, I think we need to be able to open for everyone. Let those that wants to come in decide how they want to come in and when they want to come in. And I think that, let's deal with the risk on the, when people arrive on the ground. We already have domestic tourism open. We have people going to supermarkets. We've got people doing all sorts of things, here, at home. So it doesn't pose any further risk, if we have, a plane full of tourists. In fact, it may not even pose any risk, because majority of these travelers are, they rent their cars and then they go to a destination which is far from urban areas. Some get into their buses and go far away, and they do things in a very organized way. So it may pose no risk to the local situation of COVID transmission. And also, if it doesn't, then why do phase-in approach? Because then we're just delaying the reopening of the industry fully. We need to capitalize on this, and we need to welcome tourists with open arms. And I believe that phased in is not a way to go. But if government wants to talk about phase in, we are fine to talk about it.
And Tefio, what would your, just to one last on this point before we move to some of the other questions, what would your response be to people within the industry or the government or whoever who would argue that, I suppose, just reopening the borders, as you've sort of described, would sort of bring on a second wave, as we're sort of seeing in some of the European countries, in Spain, in France, there's been indeed a spike in the number of cases that could be, of course, speculated to be related to, of course, the reopening. are there ways in which we can sort of diversify? Anthony is sort of asking a similar question, able to diversify what we do as hotels, as restaurants, etc. What is your sort of response to this, I suppose, question of the second wave and opening up?
Look, it's possible that we're going to have a second wave without even international tourists coming in. That is very, very much possible. And if you go around, every weekend I drive around to many different places, be it in urban areas or townships. So it is possible that we can get second wave on the basis of what I've observed and the behaviors, on the ground. So that's entirely possible without international tourists coming in. The opening of international borders and the issue around, second wave, I think that, international borders don't pose a risk to second wave. That's why I was saying that we're not a mass tourism destination. We don't get a lot of tourists, and especially the young tourists who will be coming here, to do beach tourism. Our offering is slightly different, and it's very much social distance. When people come here, yes, they do like to go to our beaches, be it in Durban. Cape Town, the weather is a little bit cold, but people do get in there. So, we don't have that mass problem. In fact, the only time we have that mass problem in Durban is, during December, where you've got a lot of people going into the beaches. Majority of the tourists that come here, they want to go on safaris, of which you're far away from, the main population and far away from main cities. They want to go to Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and many other places. And of course, Cape Town is one of the places that they want to go to. But the issue around whether, the second wave is going to come on the basis of borders being open, I don't think that's the case. If it's going to come, it's going to come because we are misbehaving as South Africans and we're not following the protocols that have been put in place, be it in a retail space, be it in a tourism space, or many other places. And I think it's in our own hands to make sure that that doesn't repeat. And that's what we've done, within the tourism sector, is to say, how do we close that gap? And that is why our protocols are very robust. And we've employed some technology to make sure that everyone is compliant. So I think that alone, makes us, exceptional in terms of the work that we've done. Well, are we going to have cases where people arrive and they contract COVID? Yes, we will. We'll probably have these cases for the next few years to come. And it's the new normal, around the world. And the new normal requires us to also adapt to the new normal and trade in the new normal. Otherwise, if we keep it on the fact that, there could be second wave, then let's not do this, the impact will be even higher. And that's something that we've said to government. We don't want a situation where they say open, close, open, close. We've seen this with alcohol sale. You open, you close, you open, you close. Alcohol was being sold. Cigarettes were being sold, illegally, where, you still got, government losing billions of rands. So we need to look at this, in a very progressive way and say, well, this disease is here, it's not going anywhere. And certainly probably not going anywhere for the next 18 months until the vaccine is found, is produced in mass, doses, and everyone can be able to access it. We will have this for the years to come. And I believe that, we've done what we can to mitigate the spread, and we should be allowed to operate without, any hesitation.
All right, thank you very much for that perspective. I'm just cognizant of time, and there's quite a few different questions coming in at the moment, so I try to get through as much as possible. And if not, of course, we have a team of experts as well, which we are happy to answer questions following from this webinar as well. But just a quick one. Do you have any updates on tiers and whether there'll be more payments following from the applications made in July and August, as well as if there's going to be any additional funding into for the tourism fund, or if there's any support that's going to be offered, particularly for those companies who rely on international tourism?
Well, when it comes to the funding, it is something that we're working on as a TBCSA. There was a 200 million rand that was made available for small businesses. That was not enough, and it couldn't have been enough, but that's what the Department of Tourism had, and that has been distributed. Now, for the international, for the companies, especially the DMCs, that are very much dependent, and the tour operators very much dependent on international, tourism. I mean, the only option that we have now is the government guarantees loans through the banks. But also those, we know that there are problems because the banks look at us as high risk, industry. Hence, we're trying to open up international inbound so that, the risk with the bank is lowered and we're able to access working capital. So at the moment, as we speak, one of the group or the committee that we have at TBCSA is looking into that. Simply saying, how do we talk to the Banking Association of South Africa to get, the perception of tourism industry to be looked at, sort of differently. The risk can be lowered. And also talking to government to say, well, if you're not going to allow us to open for international inbound, then you've got to put money on the table. We all do know that the government is stretched and there isn't any money to talk about. So the only other option, is to let us operate, but to do so safely. So it doesn't appear as if there will be more money. I have had a discussion as an example with the UIF commissioner around the special dispensation for the tourism and hospitality industry because of the impact. Because our recovery it's not overnight. It's going to take some time. And at least if you look at the date that we were opened, you at least need to give it 6 months. So we will need, as an example, tiers, from now up to maybe January or so, to just get back to that normalcy and to be able to earn some income. If we don't have that, I'm afraid that we're going to be looking at mass retrenchments. So it's something that we've presented to government. And the other part about it is that, if people go into normal retrenchments, they're still going to earn money from UIF in any case. But if we can then, put together a program that will make sure that people are kept, employed for the next 6 months at least, it will be a win, to ensure that, we don't have a problem with unemployment rate. So those are the type of things that we've discussed. There will be an answer to that. Hopefully this week I will hear something around the TIAS program, and also we'll hear something around, if there's going to be further relief measures for the tourism industry, especially for those companies that deal with international inbound.
Thanks for that update. And just to quickly follow up, during these discussions, particularly related to finance, are you in any discussions with banks at the moment? I know for a lot of businesses, particularly small businesses and entrepreneurs in the industry, a lot of their loan applications, of course, have been declined. And this, if there's no additional funding coming from government or other sources, are there talks of this, or is it something you're looking at or could look at?
We have talked to the banks. I've personally attended more than 5 meetings with various banks, including some of the international banks like Citibank and all the local banks here in South Africa. So the discussion was precisely about that. How do we make sure that businesses get some working capital? And those discussions are continuing. What we are doing now through the structured engagement that we have with the minister is to put together a case where we're going to get the Minister of Finance to get involved, to say how do we then talk to the banks in a different way, because what we need here is government support to be displayed, and for the banks to know that if we're talking about government guaranteed loans, we don't want a situation where government is going to say, well, yes, we know that you gave them the money, but we don't have money to pay you if they default. That's why these things goes hand in hand. Yeah. So if you go today and say, here's the money, but you don't open international borders, that company is doomed to fail. And if you go there and say, here's the money, and then you don't support with UIF tiers, same thing could happen because the money will be consumed by wages, salaries and wages. So it's important that we have this as a comprehensive package that says we're opening. Go and start trading. We know it's going to take you 6 months or so to go back to some level of break even, if at all possible. But we can't have a situation where here's the money you closed, or here's the money, but we're not going to support your employees. It has to be blended very well. So it's important. We have talked to the banks. We continue to talk to the banks, and I'm sure by after this next week we may have a final discussion with the banks to see how we're gonna this can be pushed. And also we're pushing through NEDLEC, Business for SA or BUSA, which we are a member of. So we're pushing all these things from all these angles to make sure that we preserve jobs, preserve this company,
effort.
and make sure that there's working capital.
Okay, great. Yeah, massive concerted effort is definitely required. And as said, as bilateral chambers, we're happy to support that process and our members in turn. I have an interesting sort of comment or suggestion from one of our participants, Jean-Michel, and I think it actually relates nicely to what you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, Tifiwa, and that is that trust is the new currency for those in the industry at the moment. And I know with the new protocols and regulations that have come out, which are arguably one of the most complicated or complex in comparison to other countries in the world. And I know there's quite a few issues in terms of interpreting and really implementing these protocols across the different sectors, whether you're an international company in restaurants or hotels, etc. How do we ensure, or as the industry, how do we ensure that we can maintain that level of trust when it's so difficult to interpret these regulations or to implement them? There's a lot of inconsistencies in them. And then just to follow from that, we have a comment from Jean-Michel, who suggests that as the industry, why don't we create a quality label with the support of the government and ensure that we have an independent third party to assess the hotels, restaurants, and grant them this quality label. So without the standardization, he argues, it will go a lot better into I suppose increasing this level of trust.
No, absolutely. What we have done, when we finish developing the safety protocols for the industry, we subject our safety protocols to World Travel and Tourism Council to really look at these protocols, and they've given us, a stamp of approval. So what we are doing now is that, we are giving, those that comply or those that says that they are complying, they get the stamp of approval, which we call It's Safe, Stay Safe and Eat Safe, or Travel Safe and Eat Safe. And once we've done that, the next phase of enforcing compliance is to make sure that we have people on the ground who will go to this establishment and do spot checks to make sure that, people are doing what they're supposed to do. And there has been concerns about, few places, especially restaurants, that are breaking the curfew, few places that are, not so compliant in terms of social distancing, especially when you talk about, the night, economy or the nighttime economy, where, people are going out to restaurants in the evening, there's alcohol consumption that's there. There's a need for us as a sector to really enforce, these protocols and to make sure that, we do things in a lawful way to make sure that we mitigate the spread of the virus. So that's very, very important. But, the stamp of approval is there. Yes, there's a need for a lot of people to go on the ground and to make sure that, this is being, enforced. We will be working with, as an example, the Tourism Grading Council of South Africa, which is under South African Tourism, that grades accommodation establishments. There's a workforce that's sitting there that we can use as part of making sure that, we do have random checks and we do visit many different places to ensure compliance. So that is one thing that I believe, will help us going forward. But self-regulation is important, and it's in our hands to make sure that this works. And we're going to fight tooth and nail, even locally, to make sure that our members and those that are not our members are compliant. But it's an important aspect in terms of making sure that there's certification and there is a stamp of approval. But again, it goes with enforcement.
No, of course. I mean, like you said, the self-regulation is the most important one on that. And just tell me, obviously, you've been knee-deep in all these discussions with all the different partners And I know if we compare to a lot of other industries, whether it's home affairs or, you know, any other affected industry at the moment, from your perspective, I mean, we can speak about opening in September. We can speak about what type of opening are we looking for. How have your negotiations up until present been received physically by government? Is there a positive indication you're getting from them? Is there certain pressures they're putting on you to adapt? Are you receiving anything from government in this respect?
So let me put it this way. So when we started, when the risk-adjusted strategy was introduced, you know, tourism was not supposed to open even now. We were not even supposed to be discussing this. So what we have done is that we put up a case to open tourism before government, you know, own timeline, so to speak. So we went and we met with the president. We successfully opened up, you know, domestic tourism, although it was slow to our liking, and although you know, it was open in bits and pieces, we managed to open it up. Number two, when you talk about international borders, it's the same thing. We're not supposed to be opening now. It's supposed to come in at level 1, of which in the beginning of risk-adjusted strategy, you know, the opening of international borders was being discussed to be next year, sometime in February, that we're going to be opening international borders. Here we are in August talking about, you know, opening international borders. It's because we've put pressure into government to open these borders. And, you know, we talk to other countries. We have had meetings, as an example, with Australia, New Zealand, our counterparts, you know, in that part of the world. They are not even considering doing that at the moment. They can't even talk to their own government about that. So you know, we've gone around and we spoke to various associations and various people who work within the same field. And for us to be able to be where we are, it means that, you know, there's a great deal of work that was put forward to be where we are. Now, when it comes to international borders, like I've said, we've put, you know, a motivation. Remember, we opened domestic travel 2 weeks ago. And prior to that, we opened domestic interprovincial leisure accommodation. So we've been doing everything bi-weekly in terms of the discussions. Now, you know, we've passed the 2 weeks. We've proven that, you know, from accommodation point of view, you know, in exception of a few other places in restaurants, you know, those restaurants that double up as restaurants plus music and whatnot, there are issues there. So we need to solve that. But, you know, so far we are in a trajectory where international travel, you know, it's on the table. If you look at what the Minister of Tourism said today when she was opening up, doing the media briefing, I think it's on a Business Insider. She talked about international travel. You know, that is on the table, is being considered. It's because the pressures that we've been putting onto government, it's working. And that's just one got to understand how it works, because what we want is we want to win the battle so that we can ultimately, as we go, all the small battles that we win is going to open up, you know, more and more in tourism. And until ultimately the war is going to be won. There are a lot of things to be considered. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of PR that needs to come into it. So when one goes to these meetings, it's important to ensure that, you know, one is well informed and know which buttons to press. And certainly the fact that we're talking about it, the fact that we have not moved from saying that, you know, September is the opening month, it's quite important. And I've not moved since I went to Parliament and informed Parliament that we want to open in September. I am still there. We are working on it, and watch the space.
Perfect. And I think a lot of people, a lot of participants here today will be very, very grateful for that one. And I think we have sort of come to a close. I mean, there's many more questions that we could ask, but I know Gilles Blanc, who's not on screen today, and but Frank and Melanie and everyone behind the scenes at the French Chamber, as well as the other bilateral chambers, will be happy to assist everyone here today and really strengthening our work together as well, Chifiwa. It's been great to have you on today. So thank you very much for providing some insight and clarity and just, I suppose, a snapshot into your daily life. And I can't wait for an update every bi-weekly. It's going to be great to hear from you then. So on that note, I would just like to, I don't know, Frank, if there's any last words you'd like to say before we close?
I mean, obviously, thank you, and thank you to Chief Iwa and whoever contributed. But there's a question from Anonymous with regards to positive cases in guest houses. So I would like to try to answer to that. It obviously depends on the protocols that they have in place. I think now most restaurants, most shops, hotels have the temperature check, and then a form where it's asked, have you had fever, have you been in contact with people who have been infected, etc., etc. So they should definitely have that in place, and if ever the temperature is above, or if they've ticked positively any of those boxes, then I do believe that they're in their right not to accept those guests. But the tricky part of this disease is that you can be asymptomatic, right? So you can be positive, you don't know about it, and then suddenly you check into their guest house, and only a week or two later, something might happen to your staff or other people. So it is very tricky, but I think have strict protocol in place so that at least you tackle the ones that are symptomatic. And then if it happens during the stay, then it's like when for you and me, like if you're symptomatic or if you're feeling sick, you should stay at home. So in a guest house, you should stay in your room, not get out, and then get tested as soon as possible to confirm if it's COVID or not. And then depending on the results, you take action with have been in contact with that person. So in terms of room service, or in terms of housekeeping, that might have an impact on these people who then might have to self-isolate. So it's for each and every person who's in charge of a restaurant or a guest house or hotel to make sure the right measures are implemented, and then to monitor, and then to jump on the first case or any case, so that that person is isolated, and whoever was in contact with that person is isolated. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, Frank. Yeah, and I think as we speak about opening borders and opening restaurants, and of course the economy as well, we still have a primary responsibility, particularly those in the industry serving clients, to make sure we keep ourselves and everyone else safe. So I think it's a great way to end. So I'm just going to say thank you very, very much to Frank, to the team behind the survey, as well as the team organizing the webinar today. And a very thank you very, very much for your time. I know you're a busy person, Chief Iwa, busy working hard with all these negotiations. So thank you very much for your time and your expertise today. I think it's been great to clarify some of these things and just see what the trajectory is, where we stand at the moment. Thank you to all the participants here today. Of course, our partners in Bilateral Chambers will definitely be in touch and keep you as updated and provide as much support as possible. And of course, we'll be supporting the efforts of TBCSA where we can. Until then, please keep safe, and we will see you soon. Thank you very much, everyone.